to offer.
So bottom line here, is your friend a terrorist?
No, he's not. Absolutely not.
As if preemptive war weren't bad enough, the post-9/11 world has brought preemptive prosecution to the world of counterterrorism. Some think it's a good idea, but this high-risk approach should have you wondering whether the cure is worse than the disease. Welcome to Collateral.
Oh, so somebody had approached him to give him money to blow up buildings?
To do whatever he wanted to do, but that was far from his mind.
Remember the supposed plot to blow up the Sears Tower in 2006? Of the 7 defendants in Florida on trial last month, 1 was acquitted, and a mistrial was declared in the cases of the other 6 when jurors couldn't decide whether they were actually terrorists or whether they merely wanted to take financial advantage of an FBI operative they thought was an al-Qaeda agent. Early in 2008, the Fort Dix 6 go on trial in another high-profile case. Now, much of the evidence against them came from a paid FBI informant named Mahmoud Omar. Omar was a criminal himself, and according to at least one of the defendants, it was Omar who suggested the worst acts of violence. The use of criminal informants is fraught with problems. For one thing, the informants often commit more crimes while they're in the employ of law enforcement, for which they're not prosecuted. Another problem regards regulation. Testifying before the House Judiciary Committee last July, Loyola Law School professor Alexandra Natapov said, quote, "The government's use of criminal informants is largely secretive, unregulated, and unaccountable. Informants breed fabrication." But there are even darker issues than this. Fabrication of evidence and entrapment at least show a desire to actually apprehend criminals in waiting. But the fact is, intelligence agencies and law enforcement sometimes go beyond fabrication and use undercover agents to perpetrate crimes themselves. Let's revisit a disturbing series of events in Iraq from September 2005, which may have been an example of an attempt to commit these sort of state-sponsored crimes. In the city of Basra, 2 undercover British agents were taken into custody after a shootout with Iraqi police. The undercover agents were dressed in traditional Arab garb and were driving a car containing explosives, anti-tank explosives, according to a couple of news reports. Soon afterwards, something truly bizarre happened. The British military conducted an assault on the building, literally driving a tank into it to free the 2 agents. Some 150 other prisoners were allowed to escape when they did so, which touched off riots and violence in response. The British quickly spun the story, claiming that the 2 agents were working undercover to root out Iranian-backed terrorists. Yet several news accounts quoted local Iraqi officials who believed the British agents were going to blow up innocent civilians and blame it on insurgents. The story took another strange turn when, a few weeks later in Iraq, British Special Investigator Ken Masters was found dead from hanging. Masters was believed to be investigating the incidents involving the 2 agents and was scheduled to return to Britain to his wife and 2 children in just 2 weeks. The British government claimed that his death contained no suspicious elements, but the government changed its story about the undercover agents at that time, claiming that they were actually spying on members of the Iraqi police who were suspected of torture. Of course, they didn't mention why people spying on the Iraqi police would need explosives in their car. For more details on this complex and disturbing story, visit the URL in the end credits. In the meantime, you might consider a simple question. Whose interests are served by sending agents with explosives into a city center in Iraq? It's time to acknowledge a painful truth. The interests of average citizens have diverged from those of their governments and intelligence agencies. Hope to see you next week.